And we're live. Welcome to episode 30. It is hard to believe that we've come to episode 30. I feel like my first one was just yesterday. That obviously couldn't be true, being that it was the weekend of the Final Four, and we find ourselves right before football season for episode 30 of the Bottom Line Podcast. I am your host of said podcast, and if you didn't know, now you know. Davidson Baker, Bottom Line. It just works, man. It just works. It rolls off the tongue. I got a great show, got a great episode, really short and sweet kind of freelance episode tonight, but I'm joined by a very special guest, my co-host of choice, former 2016 Northern Lakes League men's golf champion from the one, the only Sylvania Northview High School, Mr. Justin Riggs. Jay Riggs, why don't you let everybody know how you're doing today, my man?
I'm good, Davidson. I'm glad to be here. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, man, I am too. I've had quite a few guest hosts on the podcast, but coming from where I've come from and living the life the way that I've lived, and how well you talked sports with me when you were in my brother's grade in high school, reminds me that I made the right decision having you on, man. So I'm excited. We're going to talk a little bit about some takeaways from the NFL's preseason. Diaper dandies getting their feet wet, such as Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, and Lamar Jackson having 2 games in his sample size. We'll get into that. Also get in a little bit with what's going on in the coaching scandal world. Urban Meyer alike, but it seems as though Urban Meyer and his problems are the least of the NCAAs with what's come out about DJ Durkin and what's going on in Maryland. We'll touch a little bit about the NBA schedule and the top games to circle on your calendar, as well as our thoughts near the end about the new NCAA eligibility rules on the hardwood and how that could affect prospects, recruits, and what it may or may not have ties into LeVar Ball's league. Without further ado, my man Justin Riggs, did you watch Baker Mayfield's debut? It was about like 4 or 5 drives on offense against the Giants the other night. Were you watching it?
Yeah, I watched definitely a majority of it. I saw probably the second – whenever he came in, I saw it to about halfway through the fourth quarter.
So, what jumped off the page for me, and what comes with Baker Mayfield is the simple narrative that a guy that is A, undersized, B, with a checkered past, is always going to have critics that are never going to believe that he's doing enough, especially when you got guys like Sam Darnold in the same draft class as you. Am I kind of making sense?
Yeah. Keep going.
When you scratch the surface of what his numbers show, and his numbers were 11 of 20, which, 11 of 20 is all right. But what he did, when you watch the game, that numbers can never tell you, he converted every single 3rd and 4th down that he was on the field for. He stepped up in the pocket and made difficult throws while under duress. Granted, Von Miller and guys like that aren't exactly the ones putting him under that duress. But yet again, it's a step up from college competition. I thought there was more than what met the eye with Baker Mayfield in his debut. What's your overall kind of takeaway from seeing it live playing out as opposed to what the stat sheet might read?
Well, I definitely, without looking at the stat sheet, I know he was 11 for 20 in terms of passing accuracy, but I thought his pocket awareness was fantastic. Just like him stepping up in the pocket, he seemed to have like a sixth sense of like where to go and like where guys were coming from. And granted, those guys probably won't be on the Giants in like 2 weeks, but like at least have that foundation of like he's going to be able to do that in the future is like really, really important.
Yeah, and I think what also makes the world of difference for a future and a potential success in the future of a guy like Baker Mayfield is to have a guy like Tyrod Taylor in front of him. Now, Tyrod Taylor is by no means Aaron Rodgers, and by no means am I saying that Tyrod Taylor is going to take the Browns to the promised land. But what I will say is Tyrod Taylor, against first-team defensive reps, against guys that are sitting on an island like Janoris Jenkins, used his weapons to his disposal, and especially Jarvis Landry, who dominated that matchup for the couple series he was on the field against Janoris Jenkins. However, the Browns showed their true colors. Very first throw, I think it was like 20-something yards.
Yep.
Back on a 15-yard penalty. Could you expect anything else, bro?
Yeah, that was not surprising at all. I was just surprised that didn't have because it was like a 40-yard pass down the seam to Landry, and then Landry kind of got in the guy's face, and then the next defensive possession, I think Denzel Ward made a huge hit, and they called the same kind of penalty on him. So it was like basically like they're almost their two top signings outside of Mayfield. They got Ward in the draft, obviously,
right?
But kind of their two big name players now both got unsportsmanlike conduct penalties in the first half.
And it's fitting too. I'm not sure. This is a stat that kind of goes overlooked by people, so I wouldn't be surprised if you were aware of it. But I mean, a lot of people don't know that the Cleveland Browns have led the league in penalty flags now the past 3 years in a row. They have been the most undisciplined team in the National Football League 3 years running.
That's interesting. I would think it'd be like the Raiders or something like that.
Why? Because the swagger that the colors carry.
Correct.
I like that they're going to Vegas, to be honest with you.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah. 31 of the NFL owners seem to love it just as much as I do. I'm trying to remember who is the only owner. I think it was the Dolphins owner that downvoted that.
I can't remember who it was. Maybe.
I believe it was. But regardless, to kind of put a bow on this Baker Mayfield discussion, and I will segue into another realm of Browns rookies, not so much of how do you think Denzel Ward looked, because we're never going to get a good sample size of what Denzel Ward brings to the team as a fourth overall pick, rightfully so. For one, I didn't hate the pick of taking Denzel Ward at 4, but when you had a guy like Bradley Chubb on the board and you say, nah, we'll take someone else, no matter if it was a position fill or not, I kind of have a problem with that. What's your take on that?
I think Dorsey's kind of outlook on the draft was he kind of was really comfortable with the front 7. So he was like, why would we get another, even if he's right or wrong, I think he basically thought, if we already have a good enough front 7, let's build up the secondary to give those guys in the front 7 enough time to get to the quarterback instead of getting more guys in the front 7 and just almost weakening our secondary because they need to get better in the secondary.
That's a really good point. Not only as far as strengthening areas that need to be strengthened, but avoiding them being weakened. That's a good point that I didn't consider. But for me, personally, Bradley Chubb is a guy that at his ceiling potential can give you 15 to 18 sacks a season. And all I'm going to say is Patrick Mahomes, Phillip Rivers, and Derek Carr, come September, at least 2 or 3 nights out of the week, they're going to be waking up in a cold sweat, dreaming of Bradley Chubb and Von Miller coming off of both edges at them.
You got that right.
Holy shit. If I could briefly off topic, because I want to ask you your opinion, this division has been the division that me and my friends alike have had the most a bit of stagnance on in terms of trying to predict a winner. I think it's even. The AFC West fascinates me. If we get off topic, just quickly talk about who do you think comes out of the AFC West? I think every team in that division does something different, better than everyone else. What do you think?
If I had to take a team right now, I think I'd pick the Chiefs. Okay. I think Mahomes is going to be good enough for them to win 10 games.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like my lack of trust in the other teams. I want to pick the Chargers so bad, but every year you kind of fall into the trap, and like 5 of those key players are going to get hurt. Like Jason Verrett already got hurt in training camp again, literally the first practice.
I saw that.
They just feel kind of cursed to me. And I don't know if I trust the Raiders either. And the Raiders defense is really, really bad. And now that Khalil Mack's not playing, it gets even worse.
Yeah, that's a bizarre situation, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of. I think Gruden's kind of playing hardball. He's trying to he's kind of trying to take control of the team right away. I don't know if it's smart to take that out on your best player, but we'll see how that goes.
Here's the problem with the Chargers for what's happened in the past couple of years. There has not been a team in the National Football League, despite disparity of talent at any position. You could have a roster as depleted as the current Colts, as awful as last year's Jets, or something that can boast what a 1-31 clip like the Browns have given you over the past 2 years. No team statistically over the past 2 or 3 seasons, I can't remember off the top of my head, have been worse. And when I say worse, I mean abysmally bad in the fourth quarter than the San Diego Chargers. They get in the fourth quarter, and all of a sudden the wheels not only start coming off, but the transmission falls out from under the hood. Their gas leaks are going. There's smoke coming out. That's been the mystery with the Chargers. I do have to say, though, before we wrap that up and go talk about Sam Darnold, the Chargers are my pick to win that division. And why I say that is because I love Andy Reid with quarterbacks with big arms. There's absolutely no prior evidence that should tell me at all that Andy Reid should not be able to succeed with a guy that has the arm like a Patrick Mahomes does. That being said, I have read that he's been having some issues picking up not only signals, but pre-snap adjustments in his system. And that one reporter was even as far as saying that he's a good 2 to 3 months behind.
Interesting.
And as a rookie, I feel like that depletes you a lot. As someone that might be a third or fourth year quarterback in a new system, they've already got the reps, they've already got the seasoning underneath them. But I'm not going to pull the trigger on picking the Chiefs when you got Phillip Rivers. Plus, in my opinion, I believe the Chargers have one of, if not the best offensive line in the NFL. Yes, that is right. I think their offensive line might be better than the Cowboys. Regardless, we're straying a little bit off topic. Let's talk a little bit about Sam Darnold. Did you see his debut last night against Atlanta?
That one I did not see as much as. I did catch one quarter of it, and I definitely saw some of the highlights. I thought Darnold and Bridgewater looked pretty well. It looks like they kind of have like 2.5 quarterbacks there with McCown.
I was about to say, yeah, McCown was the one that trotted out first. The Jets did a good job of disguising and altering the perception of who was going to be the one to come out. No one really knew the forefront of which direction or which order the Jets were going to trot out their quarterbacks. Everyone knew one thing was for certain, though. You were going to see McCown, you were going to see Bridgewater, and you were going to see Darnold. And if you have a rookie quarterback with the ceiling that Sam Darnold has, is having guys like Teddy Bridgewater and Josh McCown, particularly Teddy Bridgewater, is that not a perfect situation to be in at the quarterback position for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think eventually they're gonna trade Bridgewater just because I don't think you need you don't need all three of those guys. I think because they're probably gonna start at this point, they'll probably start Darnold week 1 and then kind of use McCown as like the mentor / emergency backup guy.
Yeah,
they could probably if they flipped Bridgewater to someone like Tampa for the first 3 weeks without Jameis. Mm-hmm. I think they could get, I don't know, what do you think they could get a 2nd round pick for him?
Well, I mean, dude, I don't know about 2nd round pick because what the NFL has shown me recently, I'm a believer in not only what you see is what you get, but I'm a believer in seeing is believing. Not so much on the love at first sight type of aspect, but I have actual and factual evidence right here that leads me to believe a certain conclusion. Where I'm tying this all into is in the NFL nowadays, for whatever reason, late round draft picks and sometimes unspecified draft picks are like gold. They're like fool's gold. And what's going on with this is with Corey Coleman being traded for what he was traded for. Yeah, I know he's injured, and yeah, I know that he hasn't jumped off the page for the Browns, and it's the Browns. You got to give him some sort of slack for that. Is Corey Coleman maybe ask you on what base did you see Corey Coleman traded for a 6th/7th round pick to the Bills? What's the first thing that jumped in your mind when you saw that?
When I first saw that, it kind of reminded me of the Nelson Aguilar trade. You remember that a few years ago?
Yeah, really good.
Who took him? Who took him in the first round a couple years ago? Was it the Eagles who took him? Or there was another team?
I believe Nelson Aguilar was initially drafted by the Eagles. I'm going to fact check that right now, but okay. I believe that's correct. Go ahead though.
But so they picked him in the top 20, and they kind of thought he'd be like a number 1 receiver. But then they kind of brought him in the system, and they're like, maybe he's probably better in the slot. So he was kind of playing a position up, and he kind of got overwhelmed. I think that's kind of what happened with Coleman. The Browns
he was picked in the first round by the Eagles, by the way.
Yeah, at 19, I believe, correct?
20.
20, okay.
Still impressive.
So So what I'm saying with Coleman is, so the Browns drafted Coleman at like in the top 15, which basically means he's our number one guy. Instead of waiting to draft him in the second round and saying he'll be our number two guy, which is probably his natural position. So the problem was with Gordon, all the suspensions and stuff, Coleman was thrust into that number one receiver role, which he's not comfortable in. But if you play him in the slot or as a number two guy, he's going to be fine. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I do. Regardless, to bring this back around town like SpongeBob, I might not ever use that gag ever again. That was horrible.
I liked it.
Bring it around town. Bring it around town. Regardless, Sam Darnold, in contrast to Baker Mayfield, what my biggest takeaway of it was, hey, Jets trot out McCown, then they trot out Bridgewater, and then Darnold. What does that tell you? They are in no type of A, rush, B, stress, C, strife to do any type of overcompensating or, lack of better comfortability to subject their rookie quarterback to, who could eventually, a lot of people I've read and I've seen and I've heard time and time again that people believe that once Tom Brady decides that it's time to go home to Gisele Bündchen every night rather than good old Bill, Sam Darnold's going to take the keys to the AFC East and go.
Wow. So would Darnold would he have been your number one pick if you were Cleveland?
No, to be honest with you, I'll throw you for a loop. And I've been consistent with this. I literally have had this same exact take since months before the draft. In my opinion, from the film that I've seen, from the examples and evidence that has been presented to me, I believe the best quarterback in what ended up being the greatest quarterback class in the history of the National Football League is Josh Allen.
Wow. Okay.
I think he's the total package. I think that he gives you the most upside with the lowest ceiling to fail. I believe he gives you, obviously there's not going to be anyone that has the mobility that Lamar Jackson does, but Lamar Jackson will be lucky if he sees a starting opportunity arise for him within the next 2 seasons, given Flacco stay healthy. I believe that the future for him might last in the slot at wide receiver over there. Besides the point. If you throw Jackson out of the conversation, Allen is not as good as scrambling outside of the pocket and being innovative as Baker Mayfield, but he is better with using his size and his legs to create things that weren't there, a la Ben Roethlisberger, a la Carson Wentz. He reminds me a lot of Carson Wentz and a lot of Ben Roethlisberger. And the biggest hate on him will be the last thing I say about Josh Allen. The biggest hate on him this season, and I love to see that this point crumble, was he never faced elite competition and rose to the occasion. Well, in his bowl game, the most important game of his season, he had 5 touchdowns in 7 pass attempts in the first half. And just games like that are only one small piece of the puzzle. But I truly believe Josh Allen is the best in the class.
I'd like to counter that before we go on. I guess we'll just have to agree to disagree on this. This is probably just a whole different podcast with Josh Allen stock. But I mean, when Wyoming played Oregon, I mean, he got absolutely obliterated. I mean, he was he threw for under 50%. He was 112 yards. He kind of reminds me of Paxton Lynch, the kid that came out of Memphis a couple years ago. Which would scare the crap out of me because Paxton Lynch is almost out of the league.
I don't know if I see the comparisons as far as Paxton Lynch would go. Not
stylistic, just that small school guy who had the big arm, the good size.
I see what you're saying.
Maybe got overdrafted a hair. I don't know. That's kind of who I'm thinking of, but he hasn't played a snap yet.
I don't know, man. I'm a big believer as far as drafting quarterbacks in 3 things. 1, take the guy that wins. Baker Mayfield likely went number 1 overall, because he may or may not have swooed with some big-time voodoo magic in those draft interviews. I think that's what ended up shooting him from low first, early second to number 1 overall. Number one, you need to have intangibles. Number two, you need to have upside. Number three, you need to have a track record of winning. And Josh Allen, check, check, check. Really, all of these quarterbacks, check, 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 with the exception of maybe Josh Rosen on the latter part of his college career, who, by the way, Josh Rosen should be getting ready to make his debut here shortly. They're playing the Chargers here shortly. But Sam Bradford, from what I've been reading, is going to win that job. As far as the other rookie quarterbacks are concerned, have you seen any of Lamar Jackson in his first 2 games? He's been getting a lot of snaps.
Yeah, I've watched a lot of Lamar Jackson. I want to hear your take first on it.
Well, Lamar Jackson, from what I've seen in 2 small windows of evidence, which really tells us nothing on the surface of things, is what I like to call a day has been so far a day and night result performer, where some of the throws that he makes, they won't wow you. They won't make you jump out of your seat. They won't make you change your take on him, but you'll be like, oh, okay, nice. But then some of these other throws that I saw him make, particularly in the game where he struggled for the most and majority part of it against the Bears. Granted, first time playing, first time taking snaps, I understand. Some of these throws that I've seen him make in this preseason will have you like, ew, where was that going? And I haven't seen those type of throws from really anybody else. By the time you get to the NFL, the throws need to be out of your system completely, to be honest with you. And I saw Jackson make one too many, to be honest with you, in the 2 games.
I guess I'm just higher on Jackson than you are. I mean, definitely I agree that even if he hits like in his prime, he's probably not going to be a guy like that. Like, you don't want him throwing 30 times a game. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely not.
Like, you want him playing that like Blake Bortles kind of role. Like, he's going to throw 20 times a game and you're going to win with defense and run game. Like, you're not drafting Lamar to be like Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Matt Ryan, that kind of guy. You're drafting him to play. Like, he's not going to be the best player on your team, if that makes sense. He's going to, you got to build a team like the Jacksonville team. That's kind of how you win with him. Right.
And while I do see your comparison and you alluding to Jacksonville, largely Jacksonville has become what they've become because of their defense. I obviously know that, but because they won't wow you with the weapons that they have outside of this guy, named Leonard Fournette. He's kind of good.
My man.
But anyway, the thing with the Ravens is if Joe Flacco tears his ACL tomorrow and Lamar Jackson is the guy, if I'm the saner of the 2 Harbaughs, I am completely overriding the playbook and I'm going to roll up my sleeves, tighten up my belt, take a deep breath, and I'm going to get fucking creative. No one had ever seen someone as elusive and difficult to deal with, let alone tackle, as Michael Vick. Lamar Jackson has every bit and then some, and maybe even more of ability as far as Michael Vick in the open field taking off. Like I said, if Joe Flacco tears his ACL tomorrow, you have got to use that to your advantage if you're Baltimore. If you want any chance of making the playoffs, and honestly, in the AFC, I don't think the AFC is all that deep. I think the NFC is stacked. But on the grand scheme of things, I think the AFC is incredibly making the playoffs in the AFC will be an incredibly accomplishable feat for a lot of teams. What do you think? Like on paper, I think they're the second best team in that division. I think Pittsburgh clearly has more top end talent, but I think just off coaching and kind of just defense, I think Baltimore has a better chance to make the playoffs than Cincinnati and Cleveland. Wouldn't you agree? Absolutely. I don't know how anyone could disagree. Cleveland, dude, I think Cleveland hovers between the 4-12, 6-10 mark. To be honest with you, and this is an unpopular take that I have, but I think the large landscape of what happens in Cleveland's future is solely dependent on whether it, like, say, if Cleveland goes like 5-11, and they've clearly begun to take steps forward in progressing towards where they want to get finally after all these years of futility, and the front office just nixes and cuts the cord on Hugh Jackson, and now they're right back to where they started.
Yeah, I mean, I have an interesting little side piece here. I actually took the under in terms of win total for the Browns already.
Gotcha. Okay, what was it? 5.5?
Yeah, 5.5. So I'm kind of betting on like a 4-12 season, that kind of thing.
So I hate to call this man out by name, but he did come into my sanctum of DMs and ask me. I don't know if he was in your grade or the grade below. Nick Wyatt.
He's a year younger than me.
Gotcha. He actually DM'd me a couple days ago and asked me what I thought about that exact 5.5 under bet. Listen to the stakes that he has, though. He told me, I don't know who this guy is that offered this to him, but he seems like a really cool ass dude to like put this on the table for just a bet. He said if Wyatt ended up taking the over, and to be honest with you, I told him that's a bet that I would stay away from on the side of the over unless you are absolutely certain they're going to win 6 games, because I don't see them winning 7. With that being said, the risk to play factor is pretty good in his case. He gets $2,500 in cash if he wins that bet, and if he loses the bet, he's just got to mow the dude's lawn for a summer. Would you take that bet if you had to take the over?
Send me the guy's address right now. I'm running over there.
Browns win 6 games. He's $2,500 richer.
Well, definitely. A lot of the sportsbook have like the juice is on the over. I like the under is plus 120 at a lot. Like I got it at plus 120.
Plus 120 for under 5.5.
Yeah, and the over is it's like minus 165. Because usually, if you look back at previous years, when teams are like showcased on Hard Knocks, the public just loves to take that team to go over. Remember the Tampa Bay? That everyone was hyping up Tampa Bay, like, this team is playoff bound, blah 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 blah, and then they had they have the 12th pick this year, and it's like, yeah.
The numbers don't add up when it comes to trying to find a statistical norm for the teams that have been on Hard Knocks. You know, for a long time, Hard Knocks was always where teams that had hot potential came to die. And then I believe, I can't remember off the top of my head, because to be honest with you, I'm not an avid watcher of Hard Knocks.
Me neither.
But I remember seeing the statistics spiked and then went back down. I forget who it was. It might have been Mark Benson at SI. Had this graph, and if I learned any best way in school in math, I learned best way visualizing with graphs. You see, the numbers are so everywhere when it comes to teams on Hard Knocks, because there's a lot of distractions. You know, you got HBO camera crews there, and you know the social media aspect of things that play into things now, and the extra like all of the things that will go extra. Like remember the year the Dallas Cowboys of all teams being on Hard Knocks.
I mean, they're basically Hard Knocks during the year almost.
Oh,
with the
dude,
attention they get.
Last question I'll ask you before we get into the final thing about the NFL and we move to college football. True or false? By the regular season's beginning, Dez Bryant will be in a Cleveland Browns uniform.
Ooh, I'm gonna say false. Because I think Gordon's going to be back I think Gordon's going to come back, and I don't think you need Dez and Josh Gordon, but that's just my opinion.
You know, Josh Gordon is an interesting case, and I will admit, at the humility of myself and nobody else, that I know a little bit too much and more than I should on the front of the whole spectrum that he's dealing with in his past with substance abuse and whatever. I've become not an expert as far as per my say, but in terms of the surroundings that I've had in my life. And it's a tough, tough, tough world to not only come back on, but to strive on. So when everyone was up in arms, like, oh, why did Josh Gordon take himself out of mandatory football activities? And oh my God, he's just doing this for the betterment of himself. I think he's arriving right on schedule. And if he knows what's going to be best for him and I'm just saying all this because I see criticism about it, and it really bothers me. The man's had his name dragged through the mud for years, has deserved it a couple of times, more so than he hasn't. And when it comes time to put up or shut up, he shuts up, takes a step back, and tries to do what's best for him and for his future. Is that worth sacrificing valuable training camp time? I don't know. That's my perspective. What do you see?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely criticized Josh Gordon in the past for numerous things, but this is not one of the things I'm going to criticize him for. Is for taking time to kind of fix his life up a little bit. I mean, if the Browns didn't believe in Gordon, they would have cut him 3 years ago. So if they still have him, I think they still think he can be a productive player on this team. So right. I just feel like Dez would kind of be an overlap, and I'm not sure what value Dez would bring to the Browns. I think they're banking on Gordon playing within the first 3 weeks.
Yeah, and I would say that that's a reasonable time to come back. Final topic on the NFL. I'm trying to word this correctly. Know-it-all self-proclaimed know-it-all fantasy football owners all took one big universal reach for a tissue yesterday when Darius Geis was announced that his ACL is gone. I know a lot of people were really high on him fantasy-wise. A couple of my buddies had actually told me that they thought that they were so smart for taking Darius Geis. I mean, whatever, but regardless, it is a disappointing feat now and a result that is less than to be desired, and now leaves Washington with a gaping hole in their running game.
Yeah, it's kind of if you think about it, it's kind of the same thing. They're going to be in the same position last year when they had Fat Rob Kelly and your boy P. Ryan, and then they're going to use Chris Thompson as the third down back. So they kind of, not that they wasted the second round pick, but the second round pick's not going to really get him anything. And remember, Geis was actually supposed to be a first round pick, but he kind of fell because there was some stuff that came out about him. Yeah,
he didn't fall. He fucking
nosedived,
fell to the bottom of the well. Yeah. He drowned.
Yeah, because there was a lot, those anonymous scouts come out right before the draft, and there was a lot of guys that were saying he was a better prospect than Fournette was a few years ago. So he was kind of getting buzz. He was getting buzz.
I never bought into that.
Me neither, but that was like out there that some scouts thought he was a better prospect than Fournette, just in terms of his ability to come out of the backfield and like better speed. I didn't believe it.
The only thing that he had on Fournette, and to be honest with you, Fournette isn't even that far off in the speed category from Geis, and given the amount of power he carries with every single step is sorry, my mom sent me a text that was interesting. That's a great thing about live podcasts. People won't judge. Anyway, I was never a believer in anyone talking about Geis. Just because Darius Geis broke a couple of records that were held by Leonard Fournette, because LSU has tried to make a living off of quarterbacks being named Jarrett Lee and I don't know.
Brandon Jennings, Zach Mettenberger.
Dude, Zach Mettenberger was by far the best of the loot since Matt Flynn. Who was the guy that was absolutely god awful and Les Miles just would not bench him? It's not Jordan Jefferson.
Was it recently?
Yeah, African American dude.
Brandon Jennings.
I don't think
No, is that what it's
because Russell Shepard was supposed to be the next big thing, and then he played wide receiver for 95% of his thing. It's gonna kill me if I don't remember.
Brandon Harris.
Dog, Brandon Harris was
not
so
Brandon Jennings.
Garbage.
He transferred to North Carolina. I don't know where he's at now.
And continued to be garbage, dude.
They hyped him up every year in training camp too.
I was about to say where he is now. That man's got to be on his 9th year of eligibility. I feel like that man was actually when I was in 6th grade.
I don't know anything about the situation, but if you saw, North Carolina just had a big scandal about a lot of their players selling like counterfeit Jordans, and the quarterback was involved in that. So maybe Harris will play at North Carolina.
Dude, there's no way that he still has eligibility left.
Maybe not. But he did transfer there.
I was about to say at this point, like he's getting up there in the Brandon Weeden range of things. You know, could you imagine being Brandon Weeden the year he came out of that military situation that he was in and came in? You know, he's in a locker room with some guys as young as 19. He's 27. You know, my good friends of mine, shout out Kevin Goff and Ryan Mobius, used to like to joke around and say he would use his fake ID. Oh, Brandon Weeden with his fake ID, 27. Oh, man. The only quarterback that ever truly dominated Oklahoma from start to finish in a game that I've ever seen in my life. So I have to give him somewhat of props for that. And then everything after that was a downside. But nah, Brandon Harris was terrible. Brandon Harris was so bad. Les Miles refused to bench him.
They had the same or equal talent to Alabama for the past decade.
LSU? I
think so.
Maybe offensively. I don't know about defense.
In 2016, when Alabama went into Baton Rouge and won 10-0, and Hurts had 102 yards, yeah. LSU should have won that game.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I remember exactly what game you're talking about. But LSU is known for a few things. LSU is known for their running backs. LSU is known for their absolutely omission of a passing game. And LSU is known for studs in the secondary. They don't have front sevens like they do down in Tuscaloosa, man. Those front sevens that Saban churns out, it's like a shotgun. You have your front seven right here, and they're all NFL caliber first 3 rounds.
What? Yeah.
Boom. And
LSU
all these brand new NFL caliber guys waiting in the wings. I mean, I don't know if LSU is to that clip.
I think LSU just plays differently. I think they do have the same talent, but LSU's style is you're not running side to side on us. The way Alabama beats LSU is they run it right down their throat. The problem with LSU, you cannot run sideline to sideline at LSU. They're too fast.
Yeah, and that plays into their secondary. But I mean, you're not. As far as convincing me that they're as well versed in the trenches as Bama is, or really to be
not in the trenches, but everywhere else, yes.
Yeah, in the secondary, I think so. But literally everywhere else, I'd have to say we would need to agree to disagree on this. But disclaimer on trenches, and talk about trenches before we get into Urban Meyer. Are you aware of how absolutely unfathomably insane Clemson's front 4 on their defensive line is about to be?
They might have 4 first or second round picks.
I think they're all going in the first round.
And the one kid could go number 1. Dexter Lawrence could go number 1.
Yeah. Dude, I said his name out loud the other day, and is it weird that a girl that I work with at Buffalo Wild Wings was just like, "Oh, Dex, I know him."
That is weird. How does she know him?
You know Dexter Lawrence, defensive lineman out of Clemson. Her boyfriend plays football at UT and actually played football, I think not at Miami Northwestern, but one of the big prestigious Miami high schools. And Dexter Lawrence played at the rival school, and they were friends off the field, and she knew him that way.
That's a small world.
Showed me a picture with him. Dog, dude would make Refrigerator Perry, look human.
Yeah, and he's gonna run. He'll probably run a 4.9 too.
Clemson's my pick to win it all, man.
I think so. That's a very reasonable pick. I think they should be the favorite.
What do you think the odds are for them to win the national title are right now?
Without looking at them for the past couple weeks, I would say they're probably plus 300.
Do you play any of the bets that you talk about? Do you?
Oh, a lot. I guess I more talk about than I actually do, but I do bet a lot.
What through a bookie or what?
I use online.
Bovada?
Yeah, that's usually what I use, yes.
Yeah. Bovada just got a facelift too. I want to fat the other day. I might do something. Okay, college football, and then we'll dive right into Urban Meyer. College football. One line I would jump all over. My buddy Tyler Rice, who was just on the podcast the other day, couldn't help but laugh while he was trying to say it. Alabama, a 25.5-point favorite against a very depleted Louisville on opening day. Alabama might win that game 59-3, my friend.
What's interesting is they opened at 20, and then about an hour later, it jumped all the way to 25.
Really? In an hour? I didn't know that it moved like that in an hour.
Yeah, the public just like as soon as everyone saw that line, it jumped up way. And Alabama pounds people opening weekend. If you look, remember last year, or was it 2 years ago? They played USC, and it was a bloodbath. It was 56-3.
They were underwhelming in opening week last year. Barely beating Florida State, who didn't have Francois for most of that game.
But they beat them pretty well.
Francois back, right?
Yeah, he is back. He's good. I like him a lot. If he stays out of trouble.
Love DeAndre Francois' upside. I think there are very few quarterbacks in America that throw a prettier ball than he does. Okay, Clemson is plus 500. Bama plus 190.
Bama was like minus money at one point. Like they were minus 125 at one point.
I hate those odds. Playing in the SEC and playing in a situation where you're going to have to get through another equally as elite, talented team in Georgia, if you're going to get to where you want to go, plus 180 are odds that do not flatter me. Plus 500 for Clemson, though, I like that. Plus 850 for Ohio State, don't like that with how difficult their schedule is going to be. Regardless, let's talk about those Buckeyes. The investigation on Urban Meyer is, we've been hearing the crickets chirp a little bit and coming out of Columbus over the past few days. I know that they set a timeline and a date stamp. I don't remember 3-4 days ago that it would be a 2-week process. And it's been pretty quiet since. Do you think that the lack of, or, a lack of better than noise coming out of that situation is good? Or do you think that there are things that have yet to scratch the surface and maybe someone that's getting ready to come forward and throw Urban Meyer into the fire?
Yeah, definitely. Not that the noise is a bad thing, but it's definitely not a good thing because if there hasn't been a resolution yet, there's definitely still more information to come out. It's just too complicated of a story with too many people and too many sources. I don't know if you saw the thing today with kind of Tom Herman's name came up as kind of like this kind of the guy who like tipped off the what's his name? Brett McMurphy, the ESPN reporter that's kind of started all this.
ESPN reporter. He doesn't work for them anymore.
Yeah. So the allegation was pretty much that Herman kind of tipped him off because Ohio State kind of beat him out for a recruit out of Austin, Texas, and that's kind of like where he was coming from on that. But that's since been denied earlier today. But I definitely think there's more news to come out though.
Definitely, and what I couldn't agree with you more. And the X marks the spot that I point to that would bring me back to saying why I feel that that's true. Is now the sudden inclusion of Tom Herman even being remotely involved in this situation. Granted, it was years ago. It wasn't recent. And Tom Herman's ties with the Ohio State University stem from years ago. So it's not, it's not the most surprising development in the world. However, that being said, was I a little bit taken for surprise when I saw his name come up into something that, he just about skated past being anywhere near? Yeah, a little bit. And to be honest with you, selfishly, I haven't been rooting for Urban Meyer to get fired. I as a person, it's against my moral code to ever literally sit in a room by myself and say, I hope that person loses their job and can't feed their family. Because, that's a terrible fucking thing to say about somebody. However, if it comes to fruition that Urban Meyer would get canned, there is not a situation that would have me ready to dance in very little clothing in the middle of the street than Tom Herman leaving Texas for Ohio State and leaving Texas without a head coach again. Boomer son of a bitch. That would be a dream come true. It'd be an early Christmas present, to be honest with you.
Do you think that's a realistic candidate to replace him though?
I think he's at the very top of Ohio State's list if Urban Meyer gets fired. He makes more sense than any other name that could possibly be thrown into the fray. Other names that would really, I don't know why Greg Schiano isn't a take. And, I don't want to get into the whole.
Yeah, you don't have to.
Went on in Knoxville. I could write an essay in APA format with the correct headings on how absolutely moronic those people in Knoxville were for cheering about something that didn't even have legs as a story in regards to Schiano. Anyway, I don't see a lot of candidates out there being a better fit for the job than Tom Herman would be. I guess if you would have to think about it, how difficult do you think it would be to lure James Franklin from Penn State?
Actually, the first name I thought of was Bob Stoops.
Yeah, the Youngstown background and the Ohio born and raised type of thing. If I was betting money on it, I don't think he would take the job. But I will say, if there's one job, I think he's happily retired.
Yeah, I do too.
My dad's going to be watching this tomorrow. So shout out to him, and I love you if you're watching this. My dad has a couple of friends that are in tight with Barry Trammell, who writes for the Oklahoman in Norman. And he told a person who told a person who told a person that eventually led it to my dad right around the time Bob Stoops retired, that Bob Stoops isn't retiring and hopping off the couch in 2 years. Bob Stoops is retiring. However, if there was one job that I do think he would get off the couch for, if the money was right, it would be that job.
Don't you think Herman leaving Texas to go to Ohio State's kind of a lateral move?
Lateral
in terms of just like resources, like pedigree, like Texas has kind of the same stuff that Ohio State does, don't you think?
Well, that's a slippery slope to climb. And if that's a tough question.
And he's got to replace Urban Meyer, who's won like 86% of his games, where at Texas, he's kind of got his like own program now, I guess.
Yeah.
That's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I definitely don't think you're far off. But with that being said, name another Division I university that has its own nationally syndicated channel sponsored by ESPN, other than Texas.
Yeah, there's not really anything.
No, there is not. There's none. There isn't one. And because Big 12 logic, right? I come from Big 12 country, so I have the right to be their biggest critic. You got Big 10 Network, who paved the way for conference networking. Boom, big time money grab. Very first ever televised football game on the Big 10 Network was Appalachian State, Michigan. You could not script a better beginning for that. SEC Network comes along later, gets picked up by ESPN. ACC Network too. Pac-12 Network, probably available if you have Verizon Fios cable, but or if you live in some random part of the Pacific Northwest. And what does the Big 12 do? Not only do they completely turn around from the naked woman standing in front of them, being that the naked woman is all other conferences having a network, they blatantly disregard what now needs to become the norm and what could definitely help in funding by saying, oh, dude, just give Texas a network. Oh, Cincinnati and Houston want to come to the Big 12 and we can make a network and millions in profit. Nah, just give Texas a network. We'll be all right. 10 teams, Big 12. Yeah, makes no sense. We'll be fine, though. Yeah, it's asinine. Regardless, Texas is the cash cow of the South that lies outside of the SEC. I think if Texas could have jumped to the SEC while keeping its rivalry with Oklahoma intact, I think they would have jumped the gun before A&M did. I truly believe that because that's where the money is. And, there are very few universities in good old Southern America that really are contingent on their money more than Texas is. And I have taken way too much time talking about this at this point, but if I could wrap that all up into a bow and tie this into Tom Herman, it would take a serious offer for Ohio State to take Tom Herman away. However, he checks all the boxes. Did he recruit well at Ohio State as the guy in charge of recruiting? Check. Did he pull people from states like Texas and states like Nevada and states like California as head of recruiting at Ohio State? Check. Did he somehow, some way, and I'm waiting because I know one day it'll happen, dupe or pay Ed Oliver to go to Houston? Check. If I'm Ohio State, I'm opening my checkbook, man.
Well, first of all, I don't think Urban's going to get fired.
I don't either.
I I think the most reasonable resolution at this point is going to be something like a 2-game suspension. Because if you look at their schedule, they're at home versus Oregon State. That's a win. And then they're home against Rutgers. And then they're at TCU. So I don't think there's any way he's not if he is still coaching, he will be coaching that TCU game week 3. That's my opinion.
Yeah, you and I would share the exact same opinion. I think the same thing. Now, do I think that Ohio State is in jeopardy of going to Jerry World and losing the Big 12's ugly sister losing to the Big 12's ugly sister as far as contender is concerned? Without Urban Meyer? Probably not. They're talented enough to be able to make up for it. Do I think that game would probably be a lot more uncomfortable for them than it could be? Yeah. People really don't understand how big of a difference Urban Meyer really does make. And you could point all day to his tenure at Florida and his subsequent quote unquote heart attacks and then the sudden fall of that program. And you can play connect the dots all day if you want, but it's much deeper than that, man. And where I tie in Tom Herman once again is the year that they did win the national title. Who was the man calling plays?
Herman.
Tom Herman. Yep. I agree with you. I don't think he's going to get fired. But if I'm Ohio State and I have no idea what this 5'0" lady with really huge glasses is going to find in her investigation, given, disclaimer, this is the same woman that shelled Ezekiel Elliott for something that he was never criminally charged for. Something about this woman screams discipline, screams, I have power. If I'm Ohio State, I'm preparing for the worst.
Yeah, I definitely think if the worst case scenario is he gets fired, I think the most likely solution would be they hire in-house, and I think it would be the Ryan Day guy who's the interim right now, because I think he'd be the least non-controversial. Because if you think about, the Kevin Wilson, who came over from Indiana, had that issue with kind of player treatment, which we'll talk about later with DJ Durkin. So that probably wouldn't be a great look to appoint him.
Yeah, and
then Shiano presents his own problems, whether they're fair or not. So I think Day would be the guy, and it'd kind of be like, you remember the year they had Fickle, and they kind of went. I don't think they'll go 6-7 like they did back then, but
yeah, Luke Fickle was not a good fit for that job.
I mean, at this point, you can't expect to hire someone now. Like if they plucked,
well, no, you can't.
You can't pluck Bob Stoops off the street right now and say, "Oh, go coach this team to a 12-0 season." It's just not going to happen.
I mean, if the higher ups and the boosters and the people that lay their head on cold wadded cash at night that do have the pull that needs to be pulled, that Ohio State wanted that, they can make it happen.
How realistic do you think that is, though?
Incredibly unrealistic, but I will say this, and I will inform any of my listeners that are listening to this right now that are not aware of this, as I'm sure, Mr. Riggs, that you are. Unlike in high school sports, where the athletic director has complete and total say of who gets fired and who coaches what, when, where, and how all of those narratives end, let alone to how a high school's booster club is in charge of who's buying the cake and who's bringing the napkins to the party. In college, that does a complete 360 to boosters are in charge. If anyone is to ever say to you or me that the athletic director has the 100% final say and divvying sway onto who has what job and who loses their said job in major intercollegiate college sports, that would be a foolish statement, because it is all about the people that sit behind the scenes with millions of dollars in the bank. Those are the people that have the say at the end of the day. And if those people that sit on those said millions of dollars and normally call for egregious things, and remind you at Ohio State, Woody Hayes did something wrong, he did sock another player, gone. Jim Tressel did something wrong, no questions, gone. These guys aren't afraid to pull the trigger. I do think it's unrealistic that they just grab Bob Stoops off the street, but if 12 rich people in a room want it, they can make it happen.
That's fair.
Now let's get into DJ Durkin. Obviously a tragic story coming out of College Park, Maryland in May. And I feel like such a piece of work for coming into this segment, not even knowing off the top of my head the the young man's name that lost his life. What is his name? We owe it to the man, to Jordan McNair. Jordan McNair was I believe, interior lineman at Maryland, who suddenly collapsed and passed away shortly thereafter back in May. I want you to take an angle off this, Mr. Riggs. There's one word that I continuously, and when I say continuously, that's putting it nicely. There's one word that I have not stopped hearing when it comes to this story, and that's the word culture. Everyone that's talked about this story on the news and in the prints, and even to me, keeps saying the word culture. Is that alarming to you, that there is a culture out there in Power 5 football that ultimately led to not only the demise of a student athlete, but caused a young man to lose his life too soon?
Oh yeah, it's definitely a concern, because think about, what if that kid had lived and then this crap just keeps on happening? It literally took someone to die to like have an investigation. I mean, that's just scary. And I've been reading stuff. It's not just the coach. It's the strength and conditioning coach, and he's kind of like the coach kind of tells him what to do, and then he kind of runs it all. So it's like two of them, and I mean, that strength and conditioning coach is almost like the second head coach of a football team.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that.
Like the Alabama strength conditioning coach gets paid like over $1 million a year. Like that's how important some of those guys are. I mean, that is like the foundation of your football team.
Yeah, dude. That might be one of the best points that you've raised in this entire time. Absolutely. People really undervalue, not so much undermine, but definitely on the surface of things, a lot of people that consider themselves fans of football really are not truly savvy to what a strength and conditioning coach and what effect that a good strength and conditioning coach can benefit wise onto your program. I mean, there is not, and if there are very few and far in between sports on the spectrum that really prioritize, rightfully so, improvement in strength and getting stronger from the day you step in the weight room to the day you leave campus than football. Being that, I mean, it's I don't even call football a contact sport anymore. Football is a colliding sport. Like the second that linemen jump off the snap, they're running into each other.
Mm-hmm.
So strength and conditioning is absolutely, I mean, yeah, it's such an important facet. Conditioning, even though it's the latter, conditioning maybe even being the most important of it. You want to have guys with fresh legs in the fourth quarter. And not only did this young man have compromised physical attributes in what could have been, in practice, game time situations, 4th, 5th, 6th quarters. From what I've read, and I have read some details on the surface that look disturbing. Some people close to the program even went as far as saying that they felt as though it was only a matter of time.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you have these kind of situations like this, you saw this at Oregon. Remember last year, Oregon, when Willie Taggart was there and he's out at Florida State. He was the first year at Oregon. The common denominator with these kind of things is that first-year coach that comes in and he tries to set that, like you use culture. It's like, oh, you're not strong enough for me. Oh, we're going to get you strong enough. And then they kind of overdo it. And then you see these situations where guys are passing out, and it literally led to someone dying because this coach, DJ Durkin, tried to come in here and kind of set like a mindset, like we're going to be a tough football team and we're going to do it by any means necessary.
And I'm going to kind of segue into something that branches off directly into this. One day, if I get my dream job, and one day, if I become a member of the Apprivied Sports Media, one thing I will take pride in not doing is bringing someone's name into somewhere they're not involved, or bringing someone's name into somewhere that they, have no business being in. However, I have to bring up Jim Harbaugh here, being that DJ Durkin is a product of the Jim Harbaugh coaching tree, not only one of that. Many people looked at DJ Durkin as one of the brightest minds and top tier football forensic and strategic game planners DJ Durkin was as far as coming out of Harbaugh's coaching staffs. Man, I don't even like to even ask this question. However, just because of Harbaugh's name and just because of where Durkin came from, it begs the question. You don't think that Durkin's tactics and culture per se that he has installed in Maryland came by any type of way product that he could have taken notes from at Michigan? Do you?
No, I think that's kind of a take without any baseline to it. I think 90% of it is Durkin going to a new program and trying to set a baseline of here's what I want to do. This is how we're going to do it. And if you don't like it, get out. And I think, and especially Maryland has probably 15% of the exposure Michigan does. I think if Harbaugh was doing that kind of stuff, it would get exposed rather quickly. And Durkin was the defensive coordinator in Michigan, not the head coach. He's the head coach in Michigan.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But
just because of where Durkin's roots are from, and like I said, those types of questions and rhetorical thought processes are one that I'm not particularly a fan of, and I think you answered that question. And shooting it down.
Durkin also worked with Urban Meyer at Florida, I believe, for a year.
He did. I believe. Now that we're even on the topic of it, and patching Urban and Jim together in that type of crosshairs begs the question of where else he's been. Regardless, though, while I've obviously stated the biggest takeaway for me is the word culture is egregiously thrown around in this story, more so than any other one word I've seen in one controversial story in a long time. That being said, when your culture is the byproduct of something that another disturbing thing I read, some players called terrifying. We used to run convents by Northview, and yeah, they sucked, but I don't think we were ever fearful of our well-being and health. These guys really seem like they put the pads on and go to work every day for a scholarship, with the thought in the back of their head that they might leave on a stretcher. That's terrible.
I mean, I kind of read some of the details. SI had a big feature piece on it. I don't know if you got to look at that, but it was like
I saw ESPN's piece. I didn't see that.
Okay, it talked about it was kind of like bullying and demeaning guys, and they talked about guys overeating to the point of vomiting to gain weight, especially the guys in the front seven, because Durkin brought a defensive. I don't know if they switched from a 4-3 to a 3-4. Basically, they're trying to beef guys up to fit their specific system. And It was if you can't get up to X amount of weight, you're not going to be able to play. So they would force guys to overeat. And it's if you don't overeat, you're not playing. So it kind of put guys in a tough situation. And that's kind of where they got the bullying, demeaning, that kind of thing from.
That's a good point. My man, I am every second that passes by, I'm more and more thankful that I had you on. You've brought up some very good and very intelligent points. I got to ask you before we change gears and go over to the NBA, just in a quick break of the action, and for lack of ignorance on my part, or boasting of ignorance on my part, but where are you at school-wise, man?
I'm at Ohio University. I'm moving in this Thursday coming up.
Good Lord, Athens.
Yep.
Yeah. How's that been? Without giving too much away.
I've enjoyed it. Yeah, I've had fun.
I've enjoyed it.
Definitely made the right choice, academic and otherwise.
Yeah. Academically, I think OU is very underrated, to be honest with you.
Just no one talks about it.
Yeah, they have. Oh, definitely not. Not when there's certain perks that bring itself up to its light. And to be honest with you, OU does that to itself, to be honest with you, with the whole fest season, and they as a university do that to themselves. Maybe I'm too close to it to criticize them, but I'm not criticizing it at all. I think it's a beautiful thing, man. I've seen it all. I've seen it all up front and in person, with the exception of Sibs and Parents Weekend. Regardless, it's good to hear that you're having a good time. What are you majoring in again?
I'm doing finance.
Cool. Sweet. All right, so let's switch to the NBA. Obviously, the only topics that really can be talked about now that free agency's dust has settled and LeBron has made his move to Hollywood now the schedule's out. And there are some dates that I have circled. But before we get into those, and now that we're on the topic of the NBA, which you consider to be a topic of your strong suit, if you could summarize to me a couple of the biggest takeaways from this summer's free agency and trade bonanzas, and how they'll play effect into this upcoming season, give me your insight.
Just takeaways in terms of what? Just anything, or
like give me the 2 single most effective moves transactions that took place this summer on the NBA's landscape. Like, what 2 transactions are going to alter the NBA's landscape dramatically more than any of the others?
Okay.
I mean, honestly, and you can omit LeBron going to the Lakers as one, because that's obviously, now the Cavaliers are going to be terrible, and now the Lakers are going to float amongst that 3 to 5 seed range.
Okay. Well, I'll keep LeBron out to keep it
there. Yeah. Good.
The first one, I'll definitely say Kawhi going to Toronto, because first of all, that strengthens the East. It kind of dethrones the Spurs in terms of getting a top 4 seed, and I think it really boosts Toronto's overall ceiling in terms of competing with Philly and Boston. And
yeah,
I just think Toronto is like really, really competitive now, and if Kawhi is 100% full throttle, I mean, he's the best player in the East in my opinion. So if you have the best player in the East with a solid
best player in the East, that's a juicy debate. I'm sure a lot of people would have their say one way or the other on, and I definitely think a lot of people would agree with you. That's a topic that I'm going to tweet that. I'm going to tweet that out right now, and I'm going to see if I get any bites on that.
Okay.
Is Kawhi Leonard the best player in the East? I mean, who would be his biggest competitors?
Well,
Kyrie when he's healthy.
I'd say Giannis and Kyrie would be the 2 guys that come top of my head.
Okay, I'm gonna tweet this out. The bottom line. Is Kawhi Leonard the best player in the Eastern Conference? Yeah, dude. I mean, honestly, I'm not gonna say that. I don't know. I have a man crush. I have a man as masculine as a man crush can possibly be. Maybe if you want to use it in terms of an analogy, take my admiration for Ben Simmons as one would admire his man Uggs in the winter. It's a little bit uneasy as it is merited, because I've said from the day I saw Ben Simmons at Montverde Academy that that guy's going to eventually be damn close to putting his face on the Mount Rushmore of basketball by the time's all said and done. I have literally had nothing but the highest of high praises for him.
I'm the exact same way. You can ask anybody.
Dude, I mean, it's simple, because what was the one thing that LeBron James, who was literally dubbed the king by the time that he could barely drive a motor vehicle, he was selling out high school arenas of all shapes and sizes before he could even legally see a rated R movie. What was the one thing that every single scout said, if he does this, he is the perfect player? What was the one thing?
I mean, it was pretty much shoot with range.
His jump shot, or shoot, range of his jump shot under the same umbrella. Ben Simmons' problem in that also area of said umbrella is similar, but a little more drastic. I thought that Ben Simmons' jump shot coming into the NBA was a little more raw than what LeBron's was coming into the NBA. However, Ben Simmons is a product that's where literally, if Ben Simmons walked into, say we rewind back to his rookie year, Ben Simmons walks into day one on training camp, and I am an assistant coach that, has my polo halfway buttoned and I'm kind of relaxing for the day. I tell Ben Simmons, 400 jump shots after that, you can go home. Bye. Literally make that kid shoot until his arms are about to amass a new form of carpal tunnel. Like, literally, that kid is a good jump shot away from being damn near the closest thing to LeBron since LeBron. I really feel strongly. About that.
I almost go the opposite way, because if your core is Simmons, Embiid, Fultz, and then you just have role players around those guys, I'm a big Fultz guy, by the way. I think he's going to be all right. But
I still like Fultz.
Okay, yeah, me too. But continuing, like if Simmons just improves, you kind of saw it in the Boston series. He doesn't really have much of a finishing package in terms of get like in the paint. If he could just like post up and kind of find a shot where he can shoot it within 10 feet, I don't think he has to hit like standstill jump shots. I think he's so good. And he's never going to be a guy that averages 28 points a game. He's going to be like a 20-point scorer, 11 assists, 8 rebounds, and then just play hell of a defense. Like that's where he's kind of different to LeBron, in my opinion. He's not going to score 45 points in like a crucial playoff game. I think that's kind of what Embiid's role is going to be. Don't you think?
Well, Embiid's role is honestly one of the more simple puzzles to put the pieces together for in the NBA. You know, you have a guy that's disruptive inside the restricted area. That, man, what the words that are about to come out of my mouth are a little strange.
All right, I'm ready.
But Joel Embiid's footwork in that 12 to 14 foot range where he hit one dribble, whether spin and fade, turn and fade, spot and face, his footwork in that mid-range area. I watch his footwork there like some people watch porn. I watch it like I'm like, oh my God, that is so beautiful. Because that's something that we don't see out of guys that are 7 feet and taller. Anyway, Joel Embiid's role on that team is a really true disruptor. But damn, a real true disruptor in his own right that has footwork of an absolute Hakeem Olajuwon level offensively. I'm super high on Joel Embiid too. Now, as far as the Eastern Conference is concerned, and going back to your comments about Kawhi making the Raptors, right there, the narrative and the consensus from what many and the large percentage of people seem to believe going into the Eastern Conference this season is largely a 3-horse race: Boston, Philly, and Toronto, with if leaps and bounds do take place, Indiana being there at 4. Do you see it any other way?
I think Milwaukee is going to be up there as well.
That's interesting to me because I am never crazy about teams that make sudden and abrupt coaching changes.
But I think this is the right coaching change. I think Mike Budenholzer is the guy.
God, I forgot Budenholzer is there. Any guy that comes from the Greg Popovich tree.
I just like him as the coach. I thought he did a decent job in Atlanta.
Dude, yeah. I mean, he made the Atlanta Hawks, who at the time's face of the franchise was Kyle Korver, the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference.
I mean, let's look back at that team. It was Jeff Teague, Kyle Korver, Kent Bazemore, Paul Millsap, and Al Horford. That was their starting 5. And that team won 60 plus games.
And the sad narrative that, ends up becoming the not so fairy tale ending of LeBron playing the role of the big bad wolf coming to blow everyone in the Eastern Conference's house down. That was always going to be the case. And being the 1 seed, or, in certain cases, even being the 2 seed in the Eastern Conference when LeBron was looming, never really mattered. However, what Budenholzer was able to do with that team, and even what people do forget, the year before that he was the 1 seed, the final year of those Pacers Heat clashes that always set themselves up in the Eastern Conference, 2014, Sue Bradell's class, me and the boys, Jake Byler, Caleb Rao, win the national championship in our dude. Wow. Why am I drawing a blank on this? PBA or BPA, Small Business Management Team. How did we celebrate? We went to Game 7 of the opening round of the playoffs just because they were in town. Hawks Pacers. Hawks were the 8 seed, and the Hawks took them to 7 games, despite having a losing record in the regular season. Yeah, Budenholzer is a guy that makes diamonds out of coal. So you could be right about the Bucks.
Yeah, I not that the Bucks are going to be. I think there's a clear top echelon of Boston, Philly, and Toronto, and I think Indiana definitely has an argument to get in there as well. But I think Milwaukee is a pretty good 5 seed in my opinion, especially when they have a top 3 player in the conference.
Yeah, no, top 3, if not top 2. And to be honest with you, I feel like there's a lot of untapped potential that we still haven't seen from Giannis. Will Jason Kidd ever coach in the NBA again? Or maybe so, if the obvious answer might be yes, will it be anytime soon?
Head coach? I don't think so, just because he's not in tune with like the new analytics of the game. He's so
he kind of fell face first.
He could definitely, he could be an assistant coach, I think. It'd come in as kind of a player development guy, kind of like Mike Woodson maybe at the Clippers. But I don't think head coach wise, unless he like drastically changes, I just don't see how that's possible.
Off the top of my head, Jason Kidd is the sole proprietor of the single most classic and awesome sideline game-altering movie.
You're talking about the water cup thing, right?
When he looked at Tyshawn Taylor. Tyshawn Taylor was his name, right? The guard out of Kansas?
Yep, that's right.
And said, hit me. Like, pretended like there weren't 86 cameras in the arena of the Barclays Center that were going to catch him clearly mouthed. Hit me to the oncoming human being walking towards him, just so happening to have a spillable item in his hand, which thereafter can, bravo and well played. But to think that nobody was going to know that
Can you imagine that happening now? Can you imagine Twitter? Twitter would blow up if that happened.
My God, Twitter would, someone would get sued, We live in an age where Americans love 3 things more than anything else. Americans love shit that they can get for free. Americans love getting somewhere without hard work. And they love getting really offended when they have nothing to do with whatever they are for being offended about. And social media is a large factor of people being like, oh, look at this topic that is really setting a lot of people off. I'm offended by it, and it has my name nowhere on it and not happening anywhere near me. I'm offended. Let's make this about me. Yeah, America does that a lot. So nowadays, like, could you imagine if, like, Luke Walton in, like, a game, like, against the Rockets tells, like Kyle Kuzma or one of these guys, because now that the Lakers obviously have LeBron, they're going to be on national TV
every freaking night.
95, if not 98% of their schedule.
Yeah.
Sorry. Quick text from my editor. Shout out Keith Schillen over at the MMAtakeover.com. Dude, yeah. I got to say, before I get into these dates that I've circled, I have been fortunate enough to come into this opportunity writing for mixed martial arts with the MMA, with a respected site as the MMA Takeover. You know how weird it is to like be able to like say and be able to like carry yourself to have sources. Like for me to be able to say like I have sources that tell me, or sources knowledgeable. So it's crazy, to be honest with you. And while it's only like a minor couple of few, like it's really cool though.
Yeah, it makes you probably feel like you're like part of the business now.
Dude, to be honest with you, the MMA world is a very small world. It is a really small world. Not saying it's easy to break into, because it's definitely not. If it was, I would be where I want to be right now. It's definitely going to take a lot of hard work, but it's a very small world. And I find opportunities that I've come across, not easy, but, something that, maybe some people would imagine if you were trying to break into the NFL media game, some would find impossible. Regardless, some dates and some games that I circled on the calendar of the NBA. How about opening night? The Eastern Conference set the tone. Sixers at the Garden.
That's going to be fun.
I think that's the new dude. Tell me if I'm wrong. Is the Sixers Celtics the new bad blood? We don't like each other. We know we're the 2 best teams in this grouping rivalry of the NBA. Is that being born, or was it prematurely born in the playoffs this year, and next year we get to see the fullest potential of it?
We definitely saw the beginning stages of it. I still think we're in the beginning stages of it because we don't know what Markelle Fultz is, and we still don't know like there's still a few young guys that have yet to mature.
Right.
I think when all those guys hit their prime, I think you definitely have an argument for that.
Right. One guy that doesn't get a lot of praise either is Covington.
He kind of went. Covington's interesting because so last year he got a contract 4 years, $64 million, and everyone's like, "Oh man, he's really underpaid. What a great contract." And then he kind of went into the playoffs and he didn't really play well, and now it's like, "Oh, we're paying this guy $16 million when we could be going after a free agent." So I don't know. He's interesting.
Yeah, I would agree. However, some key departures that might leave a couple of holes in areas that the Sixers kind of prided themselves upon last year. Before I get into any of the main important departures, just at a local standpoint, my man Rashad Holmes is gone. Rashad Holmes from Bowling Green State University.
In Phoenix, right?
I believe he is in Phoenix now. That would be correct. Once watched him smoke a bong in Bowling Green at a house party. I literally looked at him and I like leaned to the guy next to me and I was like, that guy is going to play in the NBA in like a month. And the dude was like, no way. And I'm like, yeah, he shouldn't be doing that.
He's had some good NBA games too. I mean, he's an legit NBA player.
Dude, he has kind of like a highlight reel too. Like he's put some people on posters. Really athletic.
Like he's a good backup athletic small ball five.
Yeah, but it was absolutely hilarious when I looked at my buddy. I was like, that is something that he cannot be doing against the rules.
Let's hope none of the scouts saw that.
Or
Colangelo when they drafted him. But
Right. Oh, my God. Colangelo, what a mess. Other games I circled, LeBron's debut at home. I believe actually LeBron's the first time we will ever see LeBron in a meaningful minutes-wise scenario will be at Portland. To be honest with you, as a fan of the NBA, it doesn't matter who you put up against Portland. Portland is, for me, must-watch TV as far as basketball is concerned when you have Lillard and McCollum. Do you agree or?
They're definitely entertaining. Do you kind of buy in this take that they kind of need to trade one of those guys?
No, I'm actually a doubter in that, mainly because, and I do kind of think that I sound crazy when I kind of lead myself into this point. I like McCollum. I do. Now, do I think Lillard is a little bit more of the, franchise playing, take the last shot, star-powered, leading scorer role guy? Yes. Yep. Am I going to sit here and say that I have 0 ounces of humility in me whatsoever whenever I called that coming out of Weber State and I told everybody so? Yes. Regardless, though, he's a stud, and there's very few guys on the planet that can put it that can fill it up like Lillard can. Mm-hmm. But dude, McCollum is really not far off, and I love McCollum's game. And coming from someone who is a Thunder fan and someone that watches more Thunder games than any other team in the NBA, respectively, we play the Blazers, being that we're both in the Northwest Division, 5 times a year. So I see a lot of those guys, and gosh. From watching your favorite team standpoint, it's a bitch, because when one's cold, the other's hot. When one's on the bench, the other one is carrying the load. When one is having a less than stellar game, the other is, making up for it. And that seemed to kind of go out the window though in the Pelicans series. So
yeah, that's the problem. When you have both those guys and you don't really have a lot around them, if they're both off, you get swept by the Pellies in the first round.
Dude, that literally came so far out of left field for me. I picked Portland to sweep them.
Wow. Well, like my take on it is, I still remember McCollum dropping 30 on the Dukies back in the day, in the NCAA tournament when Lehigh beat them. But I just don't. I don't know. Like, what is your ceiling with Lillard and McCollum in terms of if you want to win a championship?
Oh, forget about it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And maybe they don't have a window just due to all the talent in the West. But you're right with McCollum. Like, there was a game last year, maybe it was in March when they're playing Golden State. I don't know if you remember this or not, but I was watching. It was on one of those late TNT games, and McCollum had like 28 in the first quarter or something. Yeah. He was like 11 for 11. He ended up having like 46 in the game. And
he's got the firepower to be able to do that, man.
Both those guys can drop 50 on anybody.
Yeah, I agree. And what makes the duo scary is you never know if they'll both be going and feeding off each other simultaneously, and that's when they're really at their most dangerous. However, those instances are few and far between. However, what is so mysterious about Portland as a whole is you could make the case that, and I had to I remember some idiot on Twitter came at me really hot for some reason that I'd never met in my life and had no idea who he was, because I was saying that New Orleans sweeping them came out of nowhere. It kind of came out of nowhere.
I thought it'd be a close series.
Personally, I thought Portland would sweep him. I thought, dude, on paper, that is one of the worst possible matchups New Orleans could have. Can you name me a guard on that roster outside of Drew Holiday right now?
You got Ian Clark. They signed Alfred Payton.
Ooh.
They got Frank Jackson, who was their second round pick last year.
Dexter, and whatever else rubble that they were able to, muster in the DeMarcus Cousins afterthought.
Right.
I've said this about the Pelicans for years. Okay, look at you guys. You got arguably the most gifted big man in the NBA in Anthony Davis. You briefly paired DeMarcus Cousins with him. Where are your guards? Drew Holiday? Okay.
He was really good in the playoffs, though. I've not been a huge Drew Holiday fan in the past, but he was extremely good in the playoffs.
And that brings me to what confused me so much about the series is Drew Holiday showed up more than Lillard and McCollum did by far, which is something that you could have never, ever gotten to predict.
The problem with Portland was the Pelicans had the best player, and it wasn't close. And the Davis situation, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the Garnett kind of era in Minnesota. It's just the front office's just lack of idea of how to surround a possible Hall of Famer with just subpar talent, just average talent.
And on the topic of, and we'll kind of wrap this up and move into the NCAA to kind of put a bow on what may be the beginning of the end for Portland, because there's two things we need to remember here, Jay. Number one, ain't nobody winning an NBA title for the next foreseeable future that is not located at Oracle Arena in the Sandy Shores Bays of South California, or somewhat kind of northern up California. The Golden State Warriors are the NBA champions in succession for years to come, my man.
You think so?
Whenever Boogie is healthy, I could make the case that team, sans LeBron and Anthony Davis, that's the Olympic United States men's national team starting five. Minus Anthony Davis and LeBron. Steph, Clay, KD, Draymond, DeMarcus Cousins. That's the U.S. men's national team minus LeBron and Anthony Davis.
But Boogie won't be there for after this year, though. It's a 1-year rental. Don't you think? They can't reasonably sign him.
Dude, on the surface of things and as of right now, that would be right. However, we have to remind ourselves, next summer is the greatest free agent class in the history of the National Basketball Association to infinity and beyond light years. I think one of my most popular podcasts I've ever done, it was episode 13 or 14 or whatever. I got to pull up the outline that I had to really give this free agent class a justice. Okay. Here is the list, and this is just the notable list of guys who will be eligible for some form of whether it's restricted, unrestricted player, or team option free agency next summer. Kawhi Leonard, Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson, Jimmy Butler, Karl Anthony Towns, Kristaps Porzingis, Al Horford, Kevin Love, Kemba Walker, Goran Dragic, Hassan Whiteside, Jeff Teague, Paul Millsap, Harrison Barnes, Marcus Gasol, D'Angelo Russell, Kent Bazemore, Jonas Valanciunas. Unreal. It's
a good list, especially the top end.
And may I mind you, that doesn't include DeMarcus Cousins, because when that podcast went live, 30 seconds into my podcast going live that day, the news of DeMarcus Cousins broke. And coarsely, me and my friend Tyke both were like, so what just happened. You could be right that he's a 1-year rental, but I think there is an external factor that directly plays into it that no one's talking about, and that's Klay Thompson. I'm not sold that Klay Thompson wants to spend the rest of his career in Golden State.
Interesting.
I mean, what reason does he have to? If he wins another ring this year, that'll be he will almost have enough rings to cover an entire hand. He's been there. He's done that. He's broke records that broke my heart. When the Thunder were up 3-1 on the Warriors, people forget Klay set an NBA single game record for threes in a game to single-handedly win Game 6 for them.
Yeah.
He has come up big in big time moments. He's hit big shots. He's been there, seen that. What do we think Klay Thompson can do? And you know, legacy is something that plays into these guys' minds in the latter parts of their career. A perfect example is LeBron James. LeBron James didn't leave Cleveland for Los Angeles to make friends. LeBron James left Cleveland for Los Angeles because if he wants any hope of inching near where Michael Jordan's pinnacle is, he's going to have to get at least 1, if not 2 more titles. And LA might not be the best place right now for him to do it, but they can set the diameter and begin the blueprint to do that.
Well, I do think go ahead.
Last thing I was going to say about that is where that ties into Klay Thompson is now that Klay Thompson has seen all these years of winning titles and has very largely gone without much adversity. Do I think it will be difficult for Klay Thompson to turn down big star max deal money that he can't get at Golden State, becoming the face of a franchise and getting the opportunity to take his legacy up another notch if he were to able to succeed on that level? I don't know, man. If you're a competitor like Klay Thompson is, I definitely think it's possible.
I guess the counter argument to that is probably most stars, you're probably right, but Klay's not like a guy that like likes all the fandom. Like he has a shoe company like from China. Like that's his shoe. Like he doesn't have a big Nike contract or Adidas contract. And he's publicly said that he'd take a pay cut to stay with Golden State. And when you brought up, so when we started this discussion, you said the 2 big storylines that I thought would be most impactful. I think the Boogie Cousins thing is most impactful because so let's say Golden State just sweeps the entire season. They go 16-0 in the playoffs, win 68 games, whatever.
Which is very possible.
So then what's Durant's mindset? I came here, we've won however many championships. Like what does Durant have to prove after that? So then what if Boogie ends up coming? They just sweep, Durant gets bored, Durant and Boogie leave, and now they're stuck with the roster they have now.
That's an interesting way to look at it. I didn't think of it that way. And the aspect of KD kind of throws a wrench into things. However, here's something that many basketball fans that pride themselves into just being 2K slobbering, opening night, whacking NBA freakazoids. For sometimes those types of people forget that these guys are human beings too. And largely that narrative played most of, if not all of, the part in LeBron taking his family to the place that A, they preferred to live, B, they already had a house in, C, was close to the high school that LeBron had already enrolled LeBron Jr. in, Sierra Canyon. These guys are human beings. And not only are these guys human beings, they're human beings with the most unique professional athlete schedule in major North American sports, with the NHL kind of, playing a mirror to that. Baseball, these guys are home for, they do play 162 games, but, the Red Sox could play their next 17 at Fenway. But then they go on, 2 week. There's more consistency on that front. In the NBA, you got a back-to-back, one night in LA, the next night might be in Memphis, then 2 games back-to-back at home, then a 5-game road trip. I have noticed over my time in watching basketball is that NBA players, and Kobe Bryant's a great example. I don't think Kobe would have retired as early as he did if it weren't for the love that he had for his wife, Vanessa, and his children. I do think, and where this ties into Kevin Durant, do we know how old Kevin Durant's children are?
Oh, children? I have no idea.
I'm going to get a fact check on that. And obviously you should know, being that I am a Thunder fan, that, I have my judgments reserved about Kevin Durant. But that being said, Is anyone else tired of his relentless pressure on internet trolls?
I mean, I don't really like. It's like all that stuff doesn't really interest me, so I try to like stay out of it. I guess if that
It
makes
doesn't
sense.
normally interest me either, but I find something fascinating about how when someone calls his number, he's more than happy to grab it, wait in line, and take his shots at those trolls. More so than like really anybody. Like, dude, he takes this shit into DMs and like acts like he's talking to someone that like is level-headed.
He's got rabbit ears for sure.
I think he's trying to play the bad guy, man. He's too nice.
Yeah, he's developed a personality that isn't really actually who he is.
Man, he read Goodnight Moon to my cousin in 2nd grade at Eisenhower Elementary. You are not the bad guy, my friend. Okay, we have, for the large part of things, come to what has almost brought itself to be the conclusion. However, I definitely want to touch on this last topic before we say goodbye. College football is so close, and I'm so excited.
Same.
But college basketball, you know, there are a few people on this earth that have a love for college basketball, like I know you and I do. And these new rules set down by the NCAA put college basketball into the limelight as of recently. So the NCAA, who I could write a novel and bet my life savings that it would be up for some sort of New York Prize award, given how passionate I am about some of the things I absolutely despise about the NCAA. However, I think they got some of this stuff right. Not all of it, but I think they got some of these new rules right. What do you think? College basketball players, you know, some of them being appointed agents, some of them eligible for re-entry and come back into college if they're eligible for the combine. What did you think? And which ideas did you like and which ones not so much?
Have you ever heard the saying, like, don't miss the forest for the trees? Have you heard that saying before?
Don't miss the forest for the trees. I mean, that's a thought-provoking.
It basically means not seeing the situation as a whole and only focusing on like small details. And I think that's kind of like what happened here. So basically, the first rule where they basically said if you get invited to the combine and you don't get drafted, you can come back to school. So that seems it just seems like it just doesn't affect anybody. So I looked back at the combine, and here's the 5 guys that, if that rule would have been in place this past year, here's the 5 guys that could have affected. So it's Trevon Duval, the Duke point guard, the 2 Arizona kids, Alonzo Trier and Raleigh Alkins, Brandon McCoy, the center out of UNLV, and let me look at the last one I wrote down, and Malik Newman out of Kansas. So Duval, so I'll go through each separate scenario. So Trevon Duval was not going back anyway because they have the number 1 point guard coming in, and he tweeted that actually. He said wasn't going back regardless.
And they got the number 1 everything coming in.
Correct. So there's no reason for him to go back. Second of all, so the 2 Arizona kids, that program is an absolute just storm right now. Who knows what the violations they're going to have, so they can't go back to school.
You should have seen the look on your face when you said correct. You're loving it, man. You're loving it.
So, and Malik Newman, they have the number 1 shooting guard coming in, Quentin Grimes. So there's no guarantee Malik Newman's playing 30 minutes a game next year. And so Brandon McCoy is probably the only guy that would have benefited from this. So that's my point. So they changed a rule that affected 1 player in the combine. It sounds, it's a great headline, but when you actually go into the details of it, it's really not a big change at all. That's kind of my take on it.
I think you just had your shining moment of this podcast right there. I don't think that I could even try to agree with you more if I possibly could let myself. I think everything you said is exactly on point. The NCAA, you know, if you can get past the sleaziness and hypocritical nature and downright blatant falsified persona that they carry themselves as, on top of, you know, the sleaziness and the hypocrisy, there's nothing but good other than that, you know?
Yeah.
You tell a kid that might not be able to get let alone his mac and cheese out of the fucking vending machine by his ends week, that, oh, well, you're fine. we're paying for your education. Now, whether players that play at prestigious programs need to be paid or not is a completely different topic. However, this is the same governing body of regulators that say that there's not enough money to pay the players. This is the same governing body that, quote unquote, prioritizes the student athlete. Right. Okay. The student athlete. I'm not one on the and before I go into what I was going to tie that all together with, I'm not one to agree with those that look at college athletes as slaves. I think people are going a little too far by, classifying guys that are, at the end of the day, playing a game in exchange for free college as slaves. I don't see it that way.
Mm-mm.
However, I do think something stinks about the morality of the thought of it. I do think that there are maybe not easy ways to come up with a solution, but I do think that there are ways that would not take all that much effort if the NCAA, would try. But instead, we get the NCAA prioritizing saving face and coming up with these so-and-so new rules that on the surface of things looks great for the athlete because you're giving them choices, even though they don't really have a choice other than to abide by selling their soul to the college coach they signed on the dotted line for. Because make no mistake about it, the day you decide to play Division I sports, whether it's football or rowing, you are signing your soul over to the coach in charge.
Right.
You do whatever they say in exchange for your ticket to college, your ticket to eating in the dining hall, your ticket to swiping into your dorm at night. This isn't professionalism where these guys have homes and where these guys, have families. These guys are still technically kids. And for the NCAA to kind of be like, may I remind you that this came out of random. This came out of nowhere. These rule changes, there was no really set meeting. They have these so-and-so meetings, and usually when rule changes are being discussed, everybody knows about it. This came out of nowhere. For the NCAA to kind of, bury something in the sand or create this art or create something rather that got them in the headlines to where they can be like, look what we did. Look at this. Look at this. We're giving them choices. When at the end of the day, as you alluded to, once you get into the further fine print of it, did it benefit Brandon McCoy if he would have taken the chance? What's he got to gain from another year at UNLV?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's such a small change that as soon as you dive into the actual headline, it just looks like a bunch of crap. I do have two more thoughts before we wrap up.
Yeah, of course, and I had one more as well.
Okay, so the part when you said student athlete, so I mean, just part of the hypocrisy with this. So if it's all academic based and they want these guys to be student athletes, why would you not be begging them to come back to school if they weren't undrafted anyway? Wouldn't you want them to come back and get their education? It's like they're valuing academics, but they're pushing them out the door.
And also, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what plays perfectly right into that is part of these quote unquote new rules. You're setting these guidelines for quote unquote elite prospects that people that don't work for the NCAA have a say in labeling. People that don't even work for the NCAA are the ones that will be able to decide who gets the right to have agents. And do you think we're hiring agents to help said Cam Parrish with his trigonometry 101 before he gets ready for his sophomore season? Student athletes.
And then one more thing on the agents. So they said they're kind of going to elect who the elite prospects are in terms of who they think has a chance to be quality, who will get invited to the combine essentially.
Do you know who has the final say on that?
It's USA Basketball, correct?
Again, you are proving why I had you on this podcast. Continue, my
friend. So also Nike, USA Basketball is extremely close with Nike. So where there's going to be corruption within the next. Just think about it. USA Basketball is electing players from these AAU circuits to be elected who they think can make the combine. So are they going to be selective of, we're going to take all the Nike kids instead of the Adidas kids?
Yeah, and with the corruption in the forefront, as you said, while there's always going to be corruption with shoe brands and basketball being involved, then is it is it too soon to say that at least it's not Adidas? At least if it's Nike, it's only a little bit corrupt. As where if it's
Right.
Adidas, these guys have rats planted everywhere.
And I just don't understand. Why wouldn't the NCAA just let the agents set the market? You know what I'm saying? Why don't you let the agents pick who the players who are elite? And also, why would USA Basketball have any business evaluating RJ Barrett, who's Canadian, or last year Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's Canadian? Why would they have any say in whether they're going to be good? They have no association with them. RJ Barrett beat the U.S. team in the FIBAs.
By the way, I'm so high on RJ Barrett, I can't even stand it. There's a simple answer to all that. And the simple answer is the guy that is the governing body himself and the one that walks around, wears the pants, has the dick in the relationship, wears the who and what, and tells Nancy, his secretary, to get him his coffee. It goes by the name of Mark Emmert.
Yeah.
The president of the NCAA. And I read an article, I actually pulled it up right here. It was literally an incredible read by Dan Wetzel of Yahoo Sports. Headline reads, "Don't be fooled by the NCAA smoke and mirrors. This was a power grab." If the NCAA needed any more ability to be able to be like, is that an area of fun and games that are technically sports our student athletes play that we make billions of dollars off of that we can now control ourselves? Yeah, thank you. We're going to do that now. But instead, the NCAA says, look what we did. It's like they're an 8-year-old at Chuck E. Cheese trying to tell their parents what they just got out of the stop and grab machine. It's just like, look at this. Ooh, shiny, new rules. Never saw this coming. And they're using it as smoke and mirrors, really. And it's just something I would completely not be surprised from a governing body that ruled Vanderbilt's kicker ineligible from competition for having a YouTube channel that made him a salary.
Yeah, I just think overall the changes are very minute, and it's just not going to affect a lot of guys. It affects the 1% of college basketball, which is not exactly what the NCAA should be concerned with.
And the one and done is about to go away.
Yeah, within the next 3 years.
Yeah, I'm selfishly, because I love the best of the best in high school talent playing in college. Selfishly, I'm going to be sad to see that go. But it'll be interesting to see who the new wave of one-and-doners will be. Obviously, that was literally one of the focal points of Adam Silver's agenda the day he stepped into David Stern's role that he left behind. And where that ties into the NCAA, and I'll kind of wrap this up and we'll say goodbye. But obviously, I want to let you have the floor before. Again, I could go. I could have enough work to provide for an entire semester of school, plus boatloads of extra credit if I could just be given the topic of ripping and deconstructing and breaking down the monstrosity of corruption and ill-advised power that the NCAA really is. I think there are very few governing bodies in any type of area that has anything to do with sports that display disgusting morals on the level that they do, with really no regard whatsoever to what is universally and obviously not only the smart thing to do, but the right thing to do. And it's, every single thing all has the end goal of Benjamin Franklin's face on a blue $100 bill.
Yeah.
For them to charge what they do for college football playoff advertising and revenue that they gather from the Final Four, and, I don't know. And these guys that play for Louisville and Kentucky who make billions of dollars as a program in revenue, these guys get hey, you get grilled cheese with a swipe and you get class for free that you're not going to use. Enjoy. You might tear your ACL on the court too. We don't cover that either. disgusting. I have so many reserved poor judgments on the NCAA. I think they're a disgusting group.
Yeah, I guess you have a lot more like strong takes on that. And just in terms of these rule changes, like overall, just not. It's just not until they account for some compensation or
which they won't.
I just don't know how much better can it get if these players aren't being compensated one way or another. Like, there's only so many changes you can make to the current system that's going to make it like substantially better.
What I've also noticed, and this will be my final point, the NCAA governs similarly to how in the world of mixed martial arts, where one of the biggest problems used to be performance-enhancing drugs. Obviously, performance-enhancing drugs in baseball is one thing. You take someone's legacy away, you take away their right to make the Hall of Fame, that's one thing. If you're taking performance-enhancing drugs in a sport that sees you punch and choke and attempt to rip other people's limbs off, that's not okay, and that needs to be stopped. So who stepped in? It was USADA, the United States Anti-Doping Agency. And I compare USADA and the NCAA all the time on the front of they do not act as though as someone that comes into question is innocent until proven guilty. You're innocent. You're guilty until proven innocent, and they don't want to hear anything else about it. On top of that, I really think Mark Emmert and those guys in the inner circle, like they could give a piss less about, what really is good for the quote unquote student athletes and what really does. North Carolina selling Jordans. Okay. It's a violation. Okay. You broke it. Okay. You knew it was a rule and you broke it. You need to get punished. 4 games? A third of your season for a pair of shoes?
The question is, if that's the basketball program, do they get a third of the games taken off? Probably not, right?
No, I definitely think so because the NCAA because the NCAA loves to show that they have power. And that's
but against the big programs, will they do that?
I really believe so. Because the NCAA loves nothing more than to show, hey, look at us. We're here and we have a say in all this and we have power to do things that we want. Even if the public says that this is wrong, we can do it. Ha, 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 ha. The NCAA has made a living off of that for forever.
Yeah, they did have the academic scandal and the basketball program pretty much got a slap on the wrist. That's kind of where I was going with that.
Yeah, no, and obviously
they're very selective.
Obviously, sometimes certain programs get viewed in a different light and then, however, I will say this, and this will be my final thought. You seen the movie The Blind Side?
I have.
Did you read the book?
I've not read the book.
The book is tremendous. I'm not one of those people that tells everybody, oh, the book is so much better than the movie. On the verse of everything I will, but that's a case where that's true. And one thing that plays into the point of the NCAA looking at everyone that comes into question as guilty before proven innocent, they knew that they were going to suspend those guys that quote unquote sold shoes or whatever they sold. They knew that they were going to suspend eluded them for 4 games, whether they had enough evidence to do it or not. They knew that they were because that's how they operate. And if you remember in the movie, Michael Orr actually had a passage in some little newspaper. I only remember this because I read the book and I was super interested in it at the time. Michael Orr put a passage in whatever local paper in Oxford, Mississippi there was about his experience with the NCAA agent that handled his specific case. And he said every single move, every single blink, every single bat of an eye that woman carried herself to be in the movie, a cold-blooded bitch, that's what she was in real life. She saw him walk in, didn't say hello, didn't say how are you, got right to it and got right to accusing him of something that beyond the surface he might have been guilty of to a small part of it, but they don't see things like that. They don't. They have a fist of power, they have a mallet, they can sit at they sit at the chairs and say that we have power, and that's how they operate. And that's why these guys aren't getting paid. And that's why, people that make money off of YouTube accounts that kick at Vanderbilt lose their eligibility.
Yeah.
So, all right. I believe that that brings us to the end. Dude, thanks a lot for coming on. And I know I tend to ramble on about things all the time, but, I think I definitely made the right call of having you come on the podcast. I think you said a lot of very, very intelligent and true points.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I had a lot of fun. Definitely enjoyed hearing your opinions on everything.
Yeah, dude, would definitely be remiss if I didn't say that I'd like to have you back on again soon for sure. If you'd be interested in coming back on again in the near future, whenever we originally discussed you coming on, it was like a time where like I was super, super booked and scheduled, and now I'm kind of like open.
Yeah, this is kind of 2 weeks in the making almost.
Yeah, it was because like I don't know if you saw. I mean, I had 4 last week and 3 the week before.
Right.
Yeah, the demand is there. And may I take the time now, being that I'm on episode 30 and the wheels are in motion. And Mr. Riggs, I apologize that I cannot include you in this party, but I will offer you something else in return. Before we say goodbye on episode 30, I would like to announce to those listening that on August 26th, I will be debuting a new special on this podcast called The Bottom Line College Football Biweekly Roundtable. It'll be like an around the horn fashion type of thing. Me and 4 of my most trusted college football fan friends of all different fandoms, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Michigan. There's going to be arguments. There's going to be insults. There's going to be differing takes. And I get to sit here and play devil's advocate for all of it. And it will happen every 2 weeks throughout college football season. And I'll be doing it for college basketball season as well. Would you be interested in being on that roundtable for college basketball?
Yes, for sure.
Jordan Rose is going to be a part of that.
Double me down on that if Jay Rose is going to be there.
Yeah, that already to me it screams a great time. But anyway, yeah. So for those listening, this is my first like public revelation of it. That will be starting on August 26th, which is the Sunday of the very first kickoff week. The members of the panel, for those listening, in case you know me and know my friends, it'll be Tyler Rice, Tino Vergils, Denver Hunter Mark, Connor Maloney, and Taylor Jones, and myself. I will not do like the around the horn thing where I give people points. I've never really quite understood that. But we will have a lot of fun, and I can't wait. That'll be every 2 weeks, college football season. Really cool. So, all right, Mr. Riggs, do you have anything else you would like to lead us off with? No,
that's about it. Thanks for having me on again, and I appreciate all the talking. I definitely enjoyed hearing all your stuff.
Dude, hell yeah, man. It was a privilege to have you on. Yeah, you definitely had a lot of really intelligent and smart points that I said multiple times. I was like, oh, I never thought of that. So again, thanks a lot, man, for bringing a fresh perspective. And of course, being adamant about coming on in the first place. Got to get you on me, you, and someone else. I've been doing 3-way podcasts lately. Do you know a kid by the name of Patrick Andrus?
I don't know.
Yo, he goes to Northview right now, and I think he's like of your little brother's age.
Uh-huh.
Go back and listen to my podcast with him. It's, I think, my most listened to today. Dude, this kid is literally he had to have come out of Jimmy Neutron's esque of IQ. Dude, this kid is brilliant, and he goes to Northview literally right now. He's gonna be a senior at Northview right now. And I asked him to curate an entire episode, and he came up with random top 10 lists in sports, literally from like left-handed pitchers to most entertaining basketball players to like, dude. And he's throwing out stats from like the early 1900s, 1800s. Kid is unreal.
Wow. Okay. Oh yeah, I'll definitely give it a listen.
Yeah, man. That's like one of my favorites. For those of you tuning in tonight that I know or that know that the housekeeping must carry itself, I'm starting to get tired that I'm not even making sense. To the conclusion, you would know that I cannot end a podcast without giving a shout out to my friends at BetMMA.Tips. BetMMA.Tips is the #1 handicapper and betting handicapper site for the fights of mixed martial arts in the business. If you want to look at my handicaps, go to Davidson. I really, really need to go to bed. BetMMA.Tips/Davidson Baker GG. Again, do not be fooled. It is not BetMMATips.com. It is not BetMMA.com. if you as a casual are looking to see who you think is going to win the Conor McGregor Khabib Nurmagomedov fight, which you have filthy casual animal asses, head over to my handicaps and get a look at what I think might happen. BetMMA.tips. Again, no com, and that is at BetMMATips on Twitter. For me and my friend Mr. Riggs, we will be signing off, and I'll be back Monday evening for episode 31 with longtime friend and former Salary Cap podcast mate of mine, Eli Milligan. Can't wait. And for those of you that did listen and tune into all of them, I thank you and am in debt to you and would appreciate you to continue to do so forth in the future. For me and my friend Mr. Riggs, that is all. Signing off. We will see you Monday with 31 with Mr. Eli Milligan.